What's going on, guys? It is the Durf, and today I am bringing you a very strong Strand build that you can take into Onslaught and Onslaught Salvation. I figured with the Surge of the Week being Solar and Strand, it's appropriate to revisit all of fan favorites with Strand, things that can help you get your super back quicker with a little bit of a twist. So let's get on into it. Obviously, for the super, we've got the Needle Storm. Because of the Surge 2 Strand, I strongly recommend using Arcane Needle as well as the Threadling Grenade. The Threadling Grenade obviously has the tracking ability, so you don't have to be perfectly accurate. You can also throw it at your feet and run away if you get into a sticky situation, and they should thin out the herd in front of you. For aspects, Feed the Void, pretty much non-negotiable on all builds for Warlock if you're using Prismatic. Of course, I guess if I were to make an OG Strand build, which I can do that if you guys want. I have absolutely no problem doing that. I've got a pretty great build for that. You obviously wouldn't be able to put Feed the Void on for that, but there's other things you can if you prefer the OG Strand. The other aspect I have is Lightning Surge. Now, one of the reasons why I have Lightning Surge on is the ability to jolt your targets. Jolt does cause damage to overload champions. You won't see those in the Onslaught activity. However, the Jolt still applies to any enemy that you use it for. So obviously it won't really be effective at piercing the barrier, but it should be able to stun them enough if you don't have barrier to quickly unload a known heavy DPS weapon. So it's just one of those things where, and you can also get orbs from using this, and you can get amplify, which means you can run around faster. There's just a lot of benefits. If you haven't been trying Lightning Surge, I understand it's not the Surge of the Week, but it has done me very well, especially in wave activities such as Onslaught. For fragments, I'm not going to spend all day reading them because I know you guys know them, but I've got Facet of Awakening, Facet of Purpose, Facet of Honor, Facet of Sacrifice, and Facet of Balance. Now, I will say this, because it is a Strand heavy build, if you wanted to swap out any of these for anything, you may, it's really up to you. You may want to swap out Facet of Awakening for the Facet of Solitude. Again, that's optional. You don't necessarily have to do that, but if I were to change one out, that would probably be it. Either that or Facet of Balance for Facet of Solitude. The reason I don't have it swapped out, because I'm sure that's going to be a question for some people, I'm not really concerned about the Severing Blast this season, simply because there is no artifact mob that really accentuates that. There was one last season, which made it one of those things where if you were Strand heavy, it would be appropriate. But since there's really no buff to it, I understand in an Onslaught, you're going to be able to take advantage of the Severing Blast, but it's just not one of those. I think you get a better return since you're going to be using light and dark energy, light and dark damage cohesively. You're going to get melee energy and grenade energy back faster by just playing it like it is. You're not really going to be too concerned with the Severing Blast. But if that's something you really like to see, absolutely, you can swap either of those two for it, and you really shouldn't have to feel like you're going to suffer anything. For stat distribution, for this one I maxed out Resilience and Discipline. I also took advantage of the exotic extra 3 spot to get myself into a T9 intellect. However, you can also build this if you really love the melee, which in this, for Strand melee, I think it's one of the best, if not the best. You could forego intellect for strength if you prefer spamming the melee, but I want my super back as quickly as possible. Obviously, casting your super and getting some kills is going to give you a bunch of orbs of power as well. So you're going to get some buffs from that simply by the fragments that we have. Specifically, you're pretty much always going to have woven mail and or amplified because of the arc aspect as well. So that's what I would recommend, but you can kind of tweak this how you want. Mobility doesn't matter. Recovery, there's an easy fix for that on your class item. So it really comes down to, do you want your super back quicker or do you want your melee back quicker? Because theoretically, with the Arcane Needle, you know that you're stacking multiple melees. So you don't necessarily need to get it back quicker because you're going to have one on backup as long as you're not using it as soon as it spawns in. For the armor, no surprise here. Well, maybe a little bit if you haven't seen any other videos that I've done, but I do run Nezarec Sin now with my Prismatic Strand builds. I think it is an excellent pairing. You can also run things like Mantle of Battle Harmony, or you could run the exotic class item. But if you do that, you're going to want to swap kind of how you do it. I can show you both ways. So the way that I have it set up right now, because I've got the exotic in the energy slot, as you can see, I'm running Graviton. I'm going to take advantage of Nezarec Sin, build back of ability regen, and obviously that's going to include melee, grenade, and obviously your super. So because the super is Strand, you're going to get an automatic buff in damage from that simply by using it. So while Nova Bomb has been making kind of a comeback into the meta, I think this Surge is an excellent time if you've been missing out on some Strand love to take advantage of the Void and the Strand Siphon and then run your Graviton with Nezarec Sin. For the gauntlets, I've got firepower and heavy-handed, a little bit of minor bump in stat increase for discipline. Although if you don't mind the T9, you can drop that off and put it on, maybe your strength so you get your melee back a little bit quicker. But again, I'm more worried about being able to generate orbs so that I can keep my woven mail constantly refreshed. And if you're in a environment where you might be the only aggressive teammate, especially on a matchmake activity, you might be the only aggressor in the higher levels, and most people are, sitting back, picking people off, which you absolutely can do that with this class too. It pays to keep your woven mail regenerated as much as possible. For the chest armor, it's really going to depend on your activity. Chest armor is mainly for two things: damage resistance and adding a reserve mod. There's really nothing on here unless you want, if you're lacking in resilience, you're doing yourself a disservice, because resilience should be what you're focusing your armor on. That way you don't have to waste 3 energy on a font of endurance, or, the consequences constantly playing scared because, you get one-tapped by simple enemies. So focus on resilience so you don't have to waste a font on this armor piece. But because of the Strand super, you can equip harmonic reserves and then run double strand weapons in the primary slot and in the heavy slot. So you get a 2-for on that one. But damage resistance is going to be based on what, enemies you're seeing. Obviously with more Cabal, you're going to be running solar resistance. Obviously for more Fallen, you're going to be running Arc, maybe some Void. It just really depends. Now, you don't necessarily need harmonic reserves or a reserve mod in general. So if you don't want to run reserves at all, just do one of each: Arc, Solar, and Void. You'll remember I'm trying to think of how long ago it was. I think it was at least a couple of months ago. They came out with that announcement where they're going to give bonus reserves to all heavy weapons. So equipping a reserve mod on your armor isn't completely necessary to have a sufficient amount of reserves. But honestly, I still think it's non-negotiable, especially for 1 energy. If you don't need extra grenade energy, you have enough space with 2 damage mods to add a 4-spot energy, either intellect, or you can do recovery, or yes, if you need it, you can run resilience. So this kind of pairs perfectly and also leaves you space if you need to run a different reserve mod, which I will show you here in a minute. For the legs, I'm back at it. Double absolution, and I'm taking advantage of the harmonic scavenger, so I get bonus strand ammo, which with each ammo brick picked up. I am taking advantage of a full stat boost for discipline. You can see this is one of my favorite armor rolls in any armor piece. It is difficult to get this. I burned through a lot of engrams to get this one to roll, but be that as it may, it works great for the way that I play. But like I said, if you don't like the super, you don't want to use the super as much, but you'd rather spam the heck out of the melee, absolutely you can focus on getting that strength stat up as opposed to the intellect, which was what I was concerned with as a secondary stat boost. But scavenger and double absolution, I want to get my powers back as quickly as possible, so I want the reduction to all the ability cooldowns. You can, if you want, you can run a strand weapon surge. Typically speaking, you're only going to be using your strand weapon if you have that equipped in your heavy, and if you don't, I can explain. But since I'm running the strand heavy weapon, if I have armor charges and I pull out my strand heavy, I can get a bonus to damage on top of the damage buff to the surge that already is for this week. So kind of a two for there if you want it, but as you're going to see, I don't really think you're going to need it. So finally, for the class item, I took advantage of a little bit of a bump to intellect to get me into that T9. I also recommend Reaper as well as Font of Restoration. Now, Font of Restoration is because, in case you missed it, I'm running a T3 in recovery. Not my best showing in that stat for Warlock, but because I'm not really concerned about anything related to the finishers, which is mainly everything that you can do in here, everything is related to a finisher in some way, shape, or form. I don't mind throwing 3 energy at the Font of Restoration. But obviously there are cheaper ones. I just think that this is one of those where you should be using your Warlock Bond to round out your class as a whole. And just for fun, I don't really know personally how much this works for me, especially when you're more aggressive than some of your other teammates. But in a raid, it's fantastic. Powerful attraction, automatically collect nearby orbs of power when you activate your class abilities. So if you're in a raid, let's just say you're in one of the final 2 encounters of, let's just say, Root of Nightmares. You're all grouped up together. You're all shooting from one area. Anyone that's dropping orbs from casting their super, you can throw it on your class ability, and you can automatically pick them up without having to move around. So that's why it's nice. And sometimes you get to take advantage of that in the Onslaught activities, especially in the later levels when, you're kind of just wading through the muck, so to speak. For weapons, I did switch it up a bit as far as what I'm running. I do have the Super Cluster as my Strand special weapon. I'm taking advantage of the anti-barrier capabilities of this. And what I have equipped it with, since I'm not using it for ad clear, Reconstruction and Vorpal. So back in, I believe, Season of the Wish was when this came out. If you didn't get a chance to crafting this, go and craft it, level it up, take it through some Vanguard, get your level up. You want to get to at least 10 so you can put the base level Reconstruction and Vorpal on, and then throw a backup mag on. That way you don't got to worry about reloading. You're only busting it out when you need to get through a barrier. You can use it as a backup DPS weapon, but typically speaking, most people don't like getting in the face of the boss, and if it's an especially swirly boss who does attack frequently like a Tormentor, probably not the best, but you're not going to see those in an Onslaught activity. If you don't like the Super Cluster, you can always swap it out for the anti-barrier capabilities of the Scout Rifle. Fang of Uryut is a faster firing scout rifle. Rapid hit and precision instrument gives you that bonus on top of the Strand Surge already being a thing for this week. So you can get kind of a twofer on that. But, 1, maybe 2 shots of the Super Cluster is really all you need. And you're gonna pound right through that barrier for the champ. As far as the energy weapon, obviously Graviton Lance is your main play here. This is going to be taking care of all of your ad clear. It's going to be feeding Nezarec Sin to give you that energy back. And because it doesn't specify void energy, you get energy back no matter what your super is. In this case, light paired with dark, it works perfectly because you're not sacrificing ammo economy and things like that to have three different, energy or elemental weapons. If you don't like Graviton Lance, or if you don't want to run an exotic, I've got some options. First, if you don't mind it being the exotic, but you don't like Graviton for some unknown reason, you can equip Le Monarch. Le Monarch does have the Overload Champion Stun capability just intrinsically built in, but you're going to be taking advantage of the poison effect. You hit a precision hit, it spreads that poison to surrounding combatants. In an Onslaught activity, that's going to be really useful. In a Legend or Master Lost sector, that's also going to be really useful for wearing down tankier enemies. But if you don't want to run an exotic in here, I would recommend running an exotic up here. One of the things you can take advantage of, assuming that you have it, conditional finality obviously is a stasis solar double shotgun. This thing is still super powerful. It will still blast a champ away, and you will get the slow effect as well as the scorch effect if you are close enough and hit all of your pellets on the barrier. Now, typically speaking, the barrier champ is not exactly a skinny person ever, so you should be able to do that. If it's a big Cabal guy, you should be able to absolutely get both benefits in this. And it's, if you've never used it before, it is extremely fast reloading. I just don't use it a lot because generally speaking, my exotic is taken up by something else. But I have run it with this. It does absolutely fit in that activity. It's just not something you want to use really anywhere else except bosses and or champs. For the heavy weapon, for the other energy options, if you do want to run conditional, there are some decent options that you can substitute for the legendary and still get some void buffs. The first one being positive outlook. Now, I am aware that RNG is not kind to everyone. This took me a lot, and I cannot stress this enough, a lot of wasted Vanguard engrams just to get to this role. And it's not even technically the role that I want, but because of the dynamic sway reduction and destabilizing rounds, it does fit. Now, the only bummer, if you're running destabilizing rounds, is there is a debuff counter once it's spammed so many times. So ideally, you want to possibly get what I have here in Age-Old Bond, which is Dragonfly. There is no cooldown for Dragonfly. So if you're hitting your precision hits and on these enemies, you're talking maybe 3 or 4 bullets tops, you should be able to get that splash damage, which means you can still power up Nezarec Sin. You will be able to do it with really any of these. But these are the two faster firing options that I think would work very well for you. The next one, Fortunate Star. It is a very quick drawing bow. It's not craftable, but it can be enhanced. I have it successful warm-up and destabilizing rounds. Sort of a similar situation. You're going to want to pick how you're shooting at enemies, so you got to be a little bit more careful than if you're just shooting at any old enemy with Le Monarch. But it is absolutely possible to get that bonus void poison damage, so to speak, the debuff. You can also run the hand cannon. Now, what I want to point out is the Graviton Lance takes advantage of the pulse rifle unstoppable champ stunning capability. None of these other ones are going to, with the exception of Le Monarch, but that's only overload. So, in the event that you come across an unstoppable, you're going to want to probably unload a super cluster magazine and then finish with Pro Memoria or whatever your heavy is. And just waste them from start to finish, and don't be concerned about ammo economy. Just pray you get some before you get to the final boss. Again, it's not the most ideal thing to take off a pulse rifle when you could be running it, but there's not really a good alternative to Void. So the name of the game is kind of trying to pick your battles. I mean, no one should really have a problem with Graviton Lance, and if you have a Void Loader, I mean, it reloads very quickly. So, but, you know, for those that love taking the Monarch into Legend and Master Lost sectors, you know, you understand the value of that one too. For the heavy weapon, I've decided to match the weapon of elemental choice in the primary slot, and that is Strand. There are certainly other options, and as you've seen in other build videos I've done, sometimes I don't have the power weapon matching anything else. In other words, I have 3 elements in 3 different slots. But in this case, I am taking advantage of it. I'm taking advantage of it for a couple reasons. Number one, I've got reconstruction. So with the magazine size of 82, reconstruction, if you're doing the math in your head, you get 164 rounds fully loaded to basically unlock on the boss all the way through. That is a lot of damage. I've done some damage testing, and while you're probably not going to get the same damage love as you would from like Microcosm, certainly Dragon's Breath and things like that, or some of the area effects of Dragon's Breath, for example, Pro Memoria, while it may not be a DPS, you know, meta gun, there is not a lot wrong with it. And with the target lock, if you do have to bust this out on a champ, or let's just say you don't want to reload and you want to switch to your heavy and finish off the horde that's coming at you, you're going to get that bonus for the dealer's choice perk, which is going to help get your super back even quicker, which will help you generate more ammo, so on and so forth. So there's a lot to be, you know, happy about if you do choose to use Pro Memoria. If you don't like Pro Memoria and you want big chunk damage, I also recommend Semiotician. Now, you can see I've got 18, we'll just call it 1,900 enemies killed with Semiotician. Most of those are bosses and or champs, so just put that in perspective. I know it's not a lot compared to some, but because it doesn't have reconstruction or auto loading, that's a lot for me, because I don't typically like to waste time reloading my heavy weapon unless it's doing substantially well. But Semiotician is an option. You can put it with field prep and bipod. If you haven't, picked this guy up or you haven't crafted it yet, I strongly recommend it. It is a high impact frame, so it does have a lot of damage potential. If you are firing while crouching, it does reload faster, and because of the bipod, you get more than 1 round in the magazine, so that's a big thing too. Now, if you want to take advantage of the Solar Surge because you think those weapons are better, I have 3 of them that you could possibly use. First one up is last season, Speleologist. Speleologist, I don't know how you pronounce it, whatever. You can see I've got 1 enemy killed. It's not my go-to, but it is a 900 round solar machine gun that you can put, I believe it's target lock on, and that is a big deal for a solar machine gun. Typically speaking, I'm not using heavy weapons to add clear, but you can put, I'm pretty sure you can put incandescent on here. I wouldn't recommend that, especially if you're going to rely on this for boss. Enlightened Action is a very good perk to use on this too, although you might find some other options maybe a little bit better. And then obviously I want to try to get that recoil close to 100 because it's really hard to fire this thing from far away, which brings me to my other 2 options. The first, you know, tried and true Apex Predator. 1,700 enemies killed. Most of those are raid bosses, for example. But Apex Predator is still second to none. Reconstruction and bipod. With the addition of the, I don't know, for those who don't know, with the addition of the weapon mods, you've got new weapon mods here towards the end. They got rid of some, brought some back, and then they added some new ones. I've got the grants increased reload speed and handling. I don't really care about the reload speed, but I do care about the handling. Or, in my case, you can do the blast radius with the velo. It really just depends on what you want. It doesn't really matter because Apex is still awesome. And make sure you have impact casing on. Increased damage on direct hits. So make sure you're hitting what you're firing at. The other option is, and this only works if you're not running if you're not running an exotic in your primary or your energy weapon, is to throw on Dragon's Breath. Now, Dragon's Breath made an appearance in another build video that I had that was specific to solar. I don't really think it has as much value since you're not running a solar super, but it does have some good tick damage. So if you want to fire and then forget about it for a minute, and not a literal minute, just a few seconds, go back to doing some ad clear with your void weapon, get some other energy built up. You can get some really good damage out of Dragon's Breath, but if you're going to do that, then you might as well drop the Strand reserves and drop the Strand Scavenger and put on Solar for each. You shouldn't have a problem fitting Solar Scavenger in here. Nope, you don't. As far as the Strand Scavenger, what I would probably recommend is dropping one of the absolutions and just picking whichever one that you want more. So if you want invigoration for the melee, or if you want the grenade cooldown, doesn't really matter, but that will free up a little bit of energy. Or I guess in my case, I could just drop down to a one powered discipline mod, and then I'll have 2 extra energy I can throw on. That's probably what I would do, honestly. I don't think I would drop double absolution just to have an extra 5-second cooldown on my, on my grenade. But you do you. There's no wrong way to fan here. Just do what works best for you. So that's kind of it. I did kind of throw a lot as far as the weapons in there, but I would just want to be able to give people options that, maybe if you're struggling to figure out, good combinations, anytime that you compare light and dark together and bonus from both, that's going to be a totally killer class or build in this case. The fact that Void is a light class and Strand is a dark class, things like Transcendence Energy regen, Transcendence buffs, elemental buffs top to bottom, whether it's Void and or Strand, you're going to be able to take advantage of all of those and be able to do bonus damage. And even if Void is not the Surge of the Week, which I'm hoping that we're going to get that soon enough, but it's not yet. Even though Void is not the Surge of the Week, the fact that most of what you're going to be shooting at is red bars, you can use abilities to take out some of the harder content enemies, or at least whittle them down so you can get some orbs of power. So this is a very fun class to play. If you've never tried it before, I strongly recommend doing it. If you can run it exactly as I have it, or you can tweak it a little bit to have some weapons that you prefer more. As far as the artifact mod goes, there's a little bit to be desired for Strand, and a little bit to be desired for Void. I've got 10 out of 12 unlocked right now, so I understand this isn't finalized. But the main 4 I've got set up: anti-barrier scout rifle. Of course, I got the submachine gun, but that's for different activities. Unstoppable pulse rifle, that's for your graviton, and anti-barrier shotgun, that's for my shotgun, obviously. Things you can add if you are running this class that will hopefully help you. Killing Breeze, you get a bonus mobility with rapid final blows, which you should be getting with graviton. Increased weapon damage to Scorn, that's a no-brainer. Power from Pain, rapid final blows against weakened combatants grant you Devour, you want that. Rapid precision hits or rapid final blows on targets affected by Jolt or Blind will create or generate ionic traces. That's going to happen because you have that arc aspect. And then finally, Hail the Storm. This one is kind of a, ironically, Hail Mary mod to have active when I'm not running anything that has to do with stasis. But chances are you're going to be running in a fire team, especially match made, where someone is going to be running stasis. So it doesn't matter who's shattering the stasis crystal or who's creating the stasis crystal, as long as you're the one shattering it. You get that extra slow damage, that ice and slow to that target around. It's just one of those things where you don't need it, but if it's a nice quality of life where, hey, if someone's spamming a bunch of stasis crystals, but they're not really taking them down that fast, you can help the situation and benefit from it. Debilitating Wave, finishers emit the damaging wave. I don't know how powerful this is, but it is something that you can use if you do find yourself performing a finisher in the middle of like 6 or 7 enemies. First of all, I've got a couple of questions for you. But what this will do, if you do accidentally activate that, is it will blast them all. So you'll get some area effect damage. With this class, though, what I'll eventually be putting on, or this build, I'll eventually be putting on Supernova for my 11th available. And then I will probably be putting Conductive Cosmic Crystal on, or more likely Severed Cold. Or Severed. Wow. Served Cold. All right. I know how to read. Anyways, those will probably be the two that I put on. The only other option that I might put on after that, I might drop the finisher, and I might put on Kinetic Impacts. The reason why I might put on Kinetic Impacts is if I wanted to run a Strand Grenade Launcher, Korex's Distress would absolutely be usable to stun unstoppable champions. And if I'm still spamming this activity when I'm running it, that could be extremely useful. So I'm just throwing that out there as something to think about. The Korex's Distress is a heavy grenade launcher, and it would apply to this situation. It has reconstruction built into it, so you don't got to worry about reloading, which is huge. That means you can have your special ammo weapon and your heavy weapon stored, and just like I've got now, you don't have to worry about reloading them when they're stored. They're going to do it automatically. So that's the build. Pretty straightforward. You can tame it how you want to. Really what you're going to be doing is make sure you're using a void weapon for your main ad clear. It doesn't really matter what it is. You're going to get the benefit from Nezarec Sin regardless. Graviton is ideally the best, but if for some reason you don't want to be scoped in, you'd rather be looking down, an auto rifle, or if you've got a wild hair and you want to run a bow, you're going to get benefits from all of it. I would choose Le Monarch over Fortunate Star, but you can do what you want, whatever's easiest for you. This certainly has faster draw time, and it can actually get even faster, but I'll let you figure that one out. So it really doesn't matter as long as you're using a void weapon to kill the majority of your enemies. So before I go and do the live gameplay demonstration, I just want to thank everyone for their support, asking me questions, submitting feedback. I had a really nice compliment from someone else the other day about my Legend of Master Lost Sector video. I just really appreciate it. I want to help as many people as possible. So the feedback I've got in the comments, both goofy and serious, or maybe even slightly trolling, that's fine. It's all in good fun. I'm just here to hopefully make your experience with this game a little bit better. And I think Revenant has done us very well so far, being that it's only week 3 now. Certainly there's bugs and things like that people are reporting, but got the new dungeon. We got a much more fun Onslaught activity than that Brave Onslaught. And I think that some of the changes that have been made have been for the better, but we'll see what progresses as the surges change and as Act 2 and Act 3 open up. I want to see what those artifact mods are too, because that might change the meta as well. Anyways, thanks for checking me out. If you did find anything helpful in this video, please consider liking and subscribing. I truly appreciate all your support. If you know someone, one of the most common things I'm seeing people search for that do check out my channel is Warlock build, Prismatic Warlock build, DPS build. Send them my way. Let them know, hey, there's the Durf out here. He's making these build videos. They're kind of centered around Warlock, most of them, but they're also centered around the ability to hopefully spam your super as much as possible and put out as much DPS as possible and help your teammates succeed in whatever your activity is. Point them my way. I truly appreciate it. Like I said, appreciate all the feedback. Feel free to leave any comments and feedback in the comments and feedback in the comments. Let me know how this build's working for you. Let me know how you like the setup, or maybe what you're changing to tweak it, what works best for you. Or if you've got a helpful tip, feel free to drop that to me as well. So I'm going to load into the gameplay. I'm going to do a few quick highlights, and then I'll do the boss battle for you. All right, I'll do it in the 10-wave onslaught, just so you can see. I promise you this will work in the 50 wave because I've used it in the 50 wave. But thanks, guys, and enjoy the clips as well as the boss battle.
Große Lixni.